last event, full crowd. That's a real success and a great way to close this fantastic day of the business of football. Gerry, Zlatan, it's a real pleasure to have you both. Gerry and I know each other from a long time. It's the first time I have the pleasure to meet Zlatan, although I've admired his many goals as a devout AC Milan fan. Gerry, it's been 18 months since you took over my beloved club. The first 9 months were more on as a passive, not passive owner, but like you were studying the club. And then after that, you started taking more kind of active measures, including bringing Zlatan on board as an operating partner of RedBird, as well as an advisor to AC Milan. You made some tough calls, one of them being deciding to let AC Milan legend Paolo Maldini go. You sold Tonali, which actually was a great deal in many ways because he raised a lot of money for the club, which allowed you to buy a lot of players. Can you give us a bit of sense of like, what's the vision now that you've studied the club and made some important decisions, and what is important to you for the future of the club?
Well, there's a lot there. It's been a long 18 months. And you're right, I told myself that if I was gonna do this, I was not gonna come into the European system as a control owner of a large team and come in guns blazing like a typical American, right? So I actually forced myself to take a year and just study and watch and understand it better. Obviously, I've had the privilege in my 30-year investment career of being around the best ownerships in sports, mostly American-based, but over the last 5 years, I've had the privilege of being associated with Liverpool, became the control owner of Toulouse, so it's been a learning curve. AC Milan I knew was going to be more of a learning curve. And so, what we've done over the last 18 months is start to put the pieces in place to execute on our investment thesis. We have a real investment thesis here. It's an investment thesis around AC Milan itself. It's an investment thesis around Serie A. And what I would say on the whole thesis is that we need to be a change agent. What's going on in Italy, and frankly, what's going on a little bit on the continent of Europe, is a little bit of Einstein's definition of insanity. Everybody wants a different result. Everybody wants to win, and they're not willing to do anything different. The world has changed. AC Milan is where it is, the second most Champions League trophies in history, behind Real Madrid, because of Silvio Berlusconi. Well, the way he did that, you can't do anymore, right? And I say that humbly by having apprenticed and started my career in sports with George Steinbrenner.
Yeah, of the Yankees.
Of the Yankees. George Steinbrenner to baseball is what Silvio Berlusconi was to European football and Serie A. And you can't win like that anymore. And so we have to find smarter ways of winning. And just from a purely an investment standpoint, the whole point is to win consistently. It's to put the foundation in place to professionalize the way these live event entertainment companies are owned. People get involved in these things, and what happens is all the rationality goes out the window. And because we're human, we all want to win. Nobody wants to win more than me. Mm-hmm. I'm hugely aligned with the fan base in Italy, but I have a job to do. My job is to win consistently. That's what they really want. And by the way, the value of these things is only going to go up if the competitive element is still there. So winning every year, if we won the Scudetto every year and we won Champions League every year, it would actually be less valuable.
It wouldn't be a good kind of product.
I mean, the whole point of sports is the unpredictability of the human element. So, look, this is a larger conversation, but, what's going on in sports generally today, it's a little concerning.
So I want to drill into that in a minute, but one of the things, we have Zlatan here, and, I find interesting, usually a lot of players kind of become managers, become sporting directors. They don't really usually join, at least in Europe, that's the case. They don't really join a private equity firm and then kind of advise the owner of a sporting club. I'd like to hear first from you, why you decided to bring Zlatan on, what you want him to achieve, and then I'd like to hear why Zlatan accepted to join you.
Look, again, as the benefit of taking a year and watching and studying is that I was able to get to know Zlatan. I've always been intrigued about the player part of the value chain. And I've always said sports is a very simple value chain. It's players, teams, and leagues. And what's amazing to me is that all the money to date has only gone into this part of the equation and has never touched this part of the equation, right? And so in America, we created a business called One Team that corporatized the economics around the collective players of the NFL and Major League Baseball. That opened my eyes. You can't have a game without the players. The players are an important part of the ecosystem, and they kind of been forgotten. So then when you get to this situation, and I met Zlatan, I was very intrigued by him because my thesis was this sport of European football is the greatest team sport in the world. And so if I could bring that team element to the way we run ourselves, the sum of the parts has to be greater than the whole. If you get everybody, I'm only as good as the people I put around me. And what's crazy to me is that people buy these sports teams and they'll use consultants and advisors and search firms and all this stuff that guys like me are familiar with in the other parts of our business that we invest in. But who would know European football and who would know AC Milan better than this guy, right? And the added benefit, this is the greatest team player I have ever met. And I'm not talking about on the field.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about the way he is, what he has brought to this, his humility, his intelligence. We do have a track record at RedBird of partnering with guys like Zlatan, right? So in the Hollywood world, in the sports world, I've partnered with Dwayne Johnson. I've partnered with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. I've partnered with LeBron James. And so I see in Zlatan the same thing. These guys are left brain, right brain. They're creative and they're great at what they did on the field, in movies, etc. But then they have an ability to make that leap over to my world. And if you can find, there's not a lot of them. If you can find it, then, and you Venn diagram yourself here, this Venn diagram should be absolutely powerful. The sum of the parts of this has got to be transformational for what we're going to do at AC Milan.
I'm going to drill into the kind of that Venn diagram, but I want to hear from Zlatan, like, what made you join RedBird? Did Gerry promise to turn you into a billionaire?
Who says I'm not? So, no. First of all, I just stopped my career 3 months before I met Gerry, and I got to know the person, and I was pretty open with my way of living and the way I wanna do my things. And after 20 years, I felt free in my life because, as a professional football player, you follow a certain program and the freedom is less. So finally, when I felt free, Gerry came in the picture and he gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I'm back on my schedule. But I mean, with Gerry, he gives me opportunities that opens doors in different kind of areas, different kind of worlds that is not my normal world, because I come from the football world, and that makes me invest in different kind of areas. And just to get that opportunity, I'm very excited. I have big ambition, and I couldn't say no, because I think if everybody remembers the day I stopped, I said I want to start over and I want to start from zero with something new. And
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and this opportunity came, and to start with something, you start from zero, and I have a lot to learn, I have a lot to grow, but I think I have a lot to give at the same time. So I'm very excited. I think when you work with the best, you become the best. So I just take step by step, and my main focus now is Milan. And like Gerry said, I know Milan pretty good, but for success, there is no secrets. Hard work pays back, and I think we have a great group in Milan, and we try to bring all the ambitions from Gerry and to make it alive, and to get that mix, the vision of Gerry with the mix of vision Italian way. But I agree with Gerry. I think Italian is not stuck in the mud, but I think something new needs to happen. And
what do you think needs to happen?
Well, look, I mean, the way European football teams are owned is everybody wants the guy. Who's the president? Who's the guy, right?
Presidente.
Let me tell you something. These things require a multidisciplinary approach. So, there's the office of the principal owner, basically. Zlatan enables me to be based in the US and still be on the ground in terms of presence and proxy in Milan. We hired him specifically at RedBird. He's a RedBird operating partner because of what he can do across everything outside of European football, in European football. But importantly, he's my proxy in Milan, day to day.
When you say proxy, what do you mean in concrete terms?
We talk multiple times every day, and he has the authority to be my voice to the players, to the staff, to everyone at Casa Milan. That is very important. And what's really important is he comes with a lot of legitimacy and credibility. If I just took a guy from New York and I put him in Milan, that would have much less credibility than Zlatan. Not because Zlatan is one of the greatest ever to play, but the way he handles himself, the way he's able to talk to the players with the voice of ownership is incredibly unique. And I want that. I don't want to go into the locker room and do that. I want Zlatan to do that.
Which usually, people buy clubs so that they can go for photo opportunities and I remember at the beginning, some of the Italian press was complaining, why isn't Gerry coming to the stadium? So, because I'm running a bigger business and this is an important part of my kind of portfolio, but it's not the only one. And
it's not because of that. It's I'm disciplined and I have a job to do. The job of the fans, who are my partner in this, is they're the ones that carry the emotional torch and that are going to be doing what they do in that stadium every game. That's fantastic. That's what makes this so valuable. My job is to deliver a value proposition for them. And I'm not going to be able to deliver and maximize that value proposition if I'm all emotionally involved and, going into the locker room, doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, this is hard to do. You got to be disciplined. And, my ability to, look, I'm human. I want to win more than anybody.
Yeah.
But my ability to stay even-keeled and to then work with someone like Zlatan and ask him to be my proxy when I'm not there. And then when I am there together, we're a very powerful combination. And, look, the other thing about Zlatan that I love, and I saw this with the New York Yankees, there was always someone like Zlatan in these championship teams, somebody who showed up with a sense of urgency to win. And, it's one thing for me as the principal owner to try to deliver that sense of urgency, but it's just not as legitimate as someone who did it, who is a winner, and have that individual in the locker room with the players developing that sense of urgency.
Totally. Zlatan, from your perspective, how is your relationship with the players, for example, with the management and the staff and the kind of the front office, as we call it in the US? How's that changing?
It's very easy. They do what I say, or else they're not there anymore. So it's this way or the other way. No, I'm joking. I think the tricky situation is, as a former player, I used to play with these guys.
Yeah.
So they were my teammates 8 months ago, and there is a huge respect between us, and obviously the situation I'm in now, the role I have now, you have to make certain decisions and not being maybe too friendly. You have to think in a different aspect from above, and you think about the club, the team, the future, and you need to decide in a different way. But I have a good relationship with them. They're doing good. It's a young team. It's a nice team, and they have a lot of hunger, a lot of will to win, and they're triggered by the whole situation, and the team is growing. Then with the management around, we have great teams around the team that Gerry set up and brings the best in every role. So, and we work from there. We do everything together, and different minds, different opinions, the way it should be. Because if you have it in one way, doesn't mean it's the right way.
Have there been occasions where you might have been in disagreement, and how have you, if it was the case, how did you deal with it?
With him?
Yeah, between the two of you.
No, not yet. I mean,
Not yet.
No, what's interesting is, when we were talking about doing this, the most important thing that I look for when I bring anyone of any kind of stature on board RedBird is an alignment of values, an alignment of culture, and an alignment of objectives. And it was very clear to me we were 10 for 10. So if there hasn't been any disagreements to date, I'm learning from him. My hope is that he can learn a little something from me. And so far, it's been great. And I don't think it's just because it's a honeymoon phase. I just think it's because we set it up. We determined early on that we're pretty much on top of each other in terms of objectives and the way we look at things.
From the standpoint of a private equity firm, like, you know, you've done this with LeBron, you've done it with like famous actors like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon, famous equity artists, correct?
Mm-hmm. Artist equity.
Yeah, artist equity, sorry, and which is a kind of production company. Like, what is the value proposition from your perspective to kind of partner with athletes and Hollywood stars?
You know, it's interesting. It's funny that, you know, in today's world, it's a soundbite world. Everybody wants to give everybody monikers, you know, Hollywood stars and athletes. I don't look at it that way at all. I look at everything as a value chain and an ecosystem. And I don't know how I can invest any better than having this guy by my side, right? And so nobody takes advantage of that. Mm-hmm. You know, Ben and Matt, what's amazing is they're teaching me more about investing in media and entertainment than I can get anywhere else. You know, and what's happening with private equity today is, you know, it's another version of Einstein's definition of insanity. You know, everybody's on top of each other. Everybody has access to the same information. There's way too much capital chasing deals, and everybody wants a different result, and returns are converging. So what are we going to do differently? And so what I started to do is I said, well, let me go right to the source. Let me go to the guys that are right there at ground zero on all of these things. And so in Hollywood, it's Ben and Matt, it's Dwayne. In sports, it's LeBron, Zlatan. And, you know, and you can't, but by the way, there's not a model here. I'm not doing this everywhere by any means. And I invest in things other than sports and entertainment. But in these areas where you're paying double-digit multiples to get into these things, and they can be vanity plays if you're not disciplined, you've got to look for ways of being a change agent and professionalizing this. And no one seems to ever want to talk about how do we own these things better. People just want to win.
Yeah.
And my point is, well, you know, you're not. If you want to win, it should be also consistently and for the long term. Then you're going to have to start to do things differently. And you know, we've seen this in terms of Europe and England and the way the whole European football ecosystem is developing. That there is need for change. And so, in our own little way, starting in Milan, we're going to look to be a change agent.
Totally. I want to talk a bit about Serie A. Zlatan, you've played in the Serie A for many years. You mentioned that Italy, I mean, you remember the years when Serie A was probably the best league in the world. The truth is, it's not anymore. What do you think, what are the reforms, what can be done to improve Serie A?
I think, obviously, why there is a big gap between the Serie A and the other leagues, I think it's all about the budget, the economics. Italy is struggling, not struggling, but they need something more, they need something new. And I think what Gerry will bring with the new stadium, he will give the fans what they deserve, because it comes up to another level, and you run it in a different way, and then you can attract better players, more better economies, and that becomes a domino effect. And that's where I think that, with all the respect for the Serie A, I think it's a little bit, a couple of years back compared to the Premier League, which are more in front when it comes to the whole surrounding. So I think...
You guys think that like Serie A can catch up with the Premier League, or that's impossible?
Well, I think we have a lot of work to do. The gap is only getting worse. But you know, it's a function of sports globally, and in America. You know, I cut my teeth in baseball, and you know, there's an increasing divergence in American sports between the big markets and the small markets, and the haves and the have-nots. And you know, that's a challenge, right? It's not surprising.
Wait, Zlatan said you're building a new stadium. Is that confirmed?
Yes.
It is happening.
Yes.
Because, you know, I do follow the Italian press, as any good Italian does, and so there's a lot of back and forth. If you listen to Mayor Sala, one day it seems like he's trying to get you back. So you can confirm here that like the new stadium will happen.
Yes.
Well, that's some news for our friends
Look,
back home.
we made more progress in 18 months than I think has ever been made in terms of a new stadium in Italy. This will be the first stadium built in Italy since 2011.
Is that the Juventus?
That was Juventus Stadium. That was 40,000 seats. This will be a 70,000 seat stadium. We're going to try to bring an American stadium and a live event entertainment campus to Milan. Of all the cities in Europe, you would think that, you know, my premise of a merger partnership between sports and music and the live event for the fans, you would think that Milan would be the perfect place for that, and that's what we're going to endeavor to do. And that should be not only good for Milan, that should be good for Italy and Serie A. And so, you know, I'm going to create a company that's going to build this stadium. And then, frankly, I want to take that company and have it go build stadiums for all the other teams in Serie A. Because, you know, there's on one element, I wear my AC Milan hat, and we want to win the Scudetto. On the other hand, I want to help Serie A narrow this gap that you're talking about.
That's part of your whole value proposition.
100%.
So you don't want to create a situation like we had a few years ago where Juventus was basically winning back-to-back.
What's that going to do? I mean, you think that's going to increase the value? If AC Milan won every year, yes, I want it to win every year. But it's the fact that it's impossible. It's never happened. It won't win every year, but we're going to do everything we can to win every year. And it's that endeavor that makes it valuable. And it's that competitive element that makes it valuable. If it's the same 3 or 4 teams every year that wins everything, that's just, I personally think that, you know, long term, when you step back and look at the health of the ecosystem and you look at valuations, they're just going to be less valuable. People, by the way, the other thing about European football that I firmly embraced when I came into it, it is a public-private partnership. You own this with the fans. Frankly, the fans think they own it, and I'm just sort of passing through, which puts a big onus on me because I take that seriously, and I want to do right by them. I want to be the guy that took the baton and added value to their asset. It's their asset, right? And I can bring a lot to it. I've been doing this for 30 years. But, you know, we have to be more self-sufficient. We have to be able to run these things more professionally. And the fundamental thing in European football that I'm concerned about is people think that you just need to outspend the next guy. And I would submit to people that that is not, I don't care how much money you have, whether you're a government or you know, an institution, deficit spending and spending, you know, unlimited amounts of money is never going to be the right thing. It's never going to be sustainable. You got to spend better, and that's what we're trying to do.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Zlatan, won't you miss San Siro? Like, you've scored many goals there. It's kind of, there's a lot of emotions. But do you still think it's like kind of for the better of the club, as you know, putting your businessman hat rather than?
I think San Siro will miss more me than I will miss San Siro. So. I made San Siro bounce. Not many players made it bounce, so that was my ego. So, no, I mean, I have great memories.
When you said before that you were humble, I kind of forgot about that.
That was the player now. No, but I think, I mean, with San Siro, I have great memories. I mean, it's a historical stadium. It's an antique place, and a lot of history was made in that stadium. But everything has a new beginning. And I think that when it comes to the fans, I mean, you have modern technique, you have modern things to do, way of doing things, and with the new stadium, you have possibilities to do something that is amazing. And then Milan is not the owner of San Siro. You want to have your own stadium. You want to run it the way you want it. So great memories, but there is always a new beginning for everything. So for me, the new stadium will be massive, and especially for the fans and the players when it will be done and whoever will play in that stadium. So business-wise, it's a massive gain. And when it comes to San Siro...
Is it fair to say, you did try to find a compromise, but this kind of shows a bit how hard it is to do business in Italy in many ways. It's kind of, there's a lot of red tape and...
Look, yeah, but you know, when we bought AC Milan, I had a lot of owners in America, sports team owners in America, call me and say, you know, have you lost your mind? You know, you can't do business in Italy. And I said, well, I don't believe that. I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. I said, of course you can do business in Italy. You just got to do things differently. And, you know, there's resistance there, but there's resistance everywhere to changing the paradigm and shaking things up. I'm trying to do it responsibly. It's not about the stadium. I love San Siro. I think it's a privilege to play in that stadium with the history that it has. The question is not about the stadium. The question is, can we win better long term if we have a new stadium? It is a tool in the overall, you know, toolbox for improving the way we do things at AC Milan, and the answer categorically is yes. And we have a lot of experience around stadiums, building stadiums. You know, it's part of the the experience that I bring from America, and I think we can add value to Serie A by leading with this example.
So the clock says that it's about to end, but I've been given extra time given the great guests we have today, so thank you. We've got actually, a few questions on the Q&A. Please, wait a second. I'll open up, so start thinking. I have a few more questions of my own. I'm sorry, I'm here. I'm going to take advantage of it. Super League. Guys, we've had a lot of chat. We know the first round ended miserably. The fans rejected it, and the clubs had to follow suit. There's a new version of it. Do you find it interesting at all?
Look, I think what's interesting is the reasons behind these efforts. I think it's, and the reasons behind these efforts is because there's an increasing divergence between the haves and the have-nots in European football. And so, I'm a guy that I'm a grinder. I like doing things the hard way. I don't think changing if things aren't going well, I don't flip the chessboard up and say, let me go try it. Let's change the entire construct. I think it's a distraction. Let's work within the construct, but just let's own ourselves better. How about that, right? The fact that these things trade on a multiple of revenue is pure laziness. Shame on all of us, okay? These things should trade as a multiple of cash flow, right? And deficit financing yourself and blowing your brains out in the transfer market and all this stuff has to change. Right? I mean, what is amazing to me, I've had the benefit, I've been investing in sports for 30 years, so, I've apprenticed with some of the greats in America. But I also invest in a lot of other industries, and I'll tell you, that's probably the best competitive advantage I bring to investing in sports. Mm-hmm. Because all this stuff that's going on in sports today, if you applied that to another industry, they'd laugh you out of the room. Right? What happened to cash flow? I mean, what's the moniker for this conference? Path to profit? I was laughing on the way in. I saw that thing, Path to Profit. Nobody talks about that.
No cash flow, no profit.
Exactly, right? And so I just think that, when it comes to these Super League discussions, let's just run ourselves better before we start thinking about changing the entire construct and paradigm.
Fair enough. Zlatan, we had De Laurentiis from Naples earlier, and he said, if I quote correctly from Italian to English, that football agents are the cancer of football, which seems pretty harsh. You had a great agent that I'm sure helped you make a lot of money. What's your view about the role that agents have in football, and especially now that you put a different cap as a businessman, and so you have to negotiate maybe with the players? How do you feel about it?
I mean, agents will always be there because they're part of the game. I think, how much influence do you give them? If you involve them too much, you give them a lot of space to do their thing, and agent's job is two things. Either they protect their player or they make themselves a happier life. And I had the best agent. I learned a lot from him. We grew up together. And it's not true he made money for me. I made money for him. So it's vice versa. So, but I think it depends how much power and how much influence you give them. And whatever strategy you put up or rules, they will always come around it because they always find the key hole to arrive for the objective. So it's all about who is your friend, who is not your friend.
Gerry, how do you feel about agents?
Again, look, they're part of the ecosystem. I look at the agents, and it was reminiscent to me of the finance world that I come from on Wall Street. I very quickly in my career moved over to the investing side because I didn't like the misalignment that I saw from bankers. Bankers will go advise you on a deal, and they get the fee and they walk away. They don't have to live with it.
No skin in the game.
Yeah, frankly, if I were to improve the agent system, I would say that, you get part of your fee on the upfront transaction, and then you have the other part of your fee gets paid out over the tail of making sure that this was a good deal, both for the player as well as for the team. Therefore, you are then an aligned participant in the ecosystem. This concept that we're going to max these things out, take all the money, and then, you deal with it, that's not good for the ecosystem. So again, this is all about alignment. And I'm just saying that as a humble observer, I'm the new kid on the block. I think things have to change.
Fair enough. So questions from the audience. So that gentleman had his hand up earlier, and then we have one up front.
Hello, Zlatan.
Can you please state where you...
I'm Olof Lund from TV4 Sweden. Zlatan, you also have as part of Hammarby, the Swedish club. What are your plans for Hammarby?
My plans is that I'm part of it and still as before. The work to improve, work to make it better, and I have involvement in Hammarby also, just like before, and this doesn't change any situation, the role I have today.
Thank you. There's a question here in the front. Anybody else? Do raise your hand, because...
Hello, my name is Davide Chinellato. I'm the correspondent for La Gazzetta dello Sport. This is for either one of you. You talk about change a lot. Do you think AC Milan needs a change also on the pitch side, especially looking at next season maybe?
Well, I think I know what you're asking, and I think we're going to constantly, change is not a bad word. I think we're going to look at change everywhere. If I can be better, we're going to put better people around me. I'm relying on Zlatan really to drive the opinions and perspectives and advice around your question. But I would say everything around Milan needs to change, but maybe evolve is a better word. Change suggests a binary thing where you're going to radically rip things out and everything else. There's no virtue to just doing that. I think evolve is a better way, and so we're going to look at processes. We're going to look at personnel. Got a lot of injuries. I'm not satisfied. Zlatan's not satisfied with the fact that we're not number one right now in Serie A. So until we're getting there, it's a young team. Frankly, to be honest with you, and I said this publicly, I think a week or two ago. You step back and you look at the fact this is a very young team and a very new team. They're actually not doing bad, right? But we don't do well with not doing bad, right? And so we got more work to do. So change should be expected.
Sorry, Gerry, on the injuries point, how does that impact kind of the valuation, or the kind of the broader value of your of the team and the club?
Well, look, I mean, it's absolutely dilutive. I mean, if we're trying to be responsible in terms of the way we construct the player wage bill, and if we do all that work and then we show up and we're not having all the players play, then what's the point? And so, and there's lots of reasons for that. You can't just hang it on the medical staff and the physio staff. I mean, you got to look at, there's these players are under a lot of pressure. They're playing way too many games. You've got Serie A, you've got European competition, you got national team competition. So, that's another thing we need to look at.
Way more compared to the NFL, for example.
Yes. And so we got to care about the health of these players.
Totally. You had a question, gentleman in front?
Hi, John Butler from GHS. How is it possible that you can compete with sovereign states? It seems impossible. Now the talk of the Super League, which you've already addressed, but what do you think about sovereign states owning football teams?
Right. So I think the answer to it's a great question. And I think the answer to your question is you're not going to outspend sovereign states. But shame on me if I can't be the guy that spends an incremental dollar of capital better than anybody else. That's the goal. That's how you compete. Right? It's not about, people think it's the aggregate dollars that you spend. It's not. It's spending that incremental dollar better. And that goes to all the change that we're talking about, the processes and not deficit financing yourself and locking in cash flow. Right? We don't lock in cash flow, so we take the money and put it in our pocket. We reinvest it back into these players, into the team. The whole point of the stadium, it's got nothing to do with San Siro. The whole point of the stadium is that gives us more cash flow. And with that cash flow, we can be more competitive with the Premier League. And so, that's the only way you're going to do it. And my hope is that everybody gets religion around this, even the sovereign states, where we've got to evolve from outspending everybody to spending better. And if we all do that, capitalism is a wonderful thing. That efficiency quotient that will come from spending an incremental dollar of capital better, that'll permeate the whole system and we'll all self-regulate. And once you self-regulate, guess what happens? Then everyone stops talking about the Super League. And we start focusing on running ourselves better, and then it's a different trajectory. And that's what my hope is. And if there's one little legacy we can contribute to this whole thing, it'll be something like that.
Zlatan, would you have played in the Super League? Sorry, not in the Super League, in the Saudi Pro League. Sorry, just talking about sovereigns.
I mean, it's different ways to see on it. I mean, if you had opportunity, I think many players when they get the offer, it's difficult to refuse, depending on what kind of offer you get. But I mean, football is for everybody. Then it depends what you're looking after, what you want to do with your football, or what kind of legacy you want to leave behind you. So it's different way of doing your thing. But I don't believe that will influence the European football or become a consequence, because it will be what it is today and will become better, and then everybody tries, and I think it's good for everybody. It becomes a domino effect because new money comes in, and it's depending how you spend it and what you're spending on. So I think it's positive in every aspect of the game.
Fair enough. We have a question from our viewers from home. One of them is, what does a successful exit strategy look like for RedBird in football?
I just got here and you're asking me to leave?
I want you to stay, don't get me wrong, but...
Look, I don't know. To be honest with you, the way I think about exit around this investment is to find a way not to exit. You know, I think this is one of the greatest opportunities I've seen in my 30-year career. I think the impact of us doing our job on the community and the country is superlative. Goes way beyond anything I've invested in to have that kind of impact in America. I think there's a need for it, which gives it tremendous legitimacy. And so, you know, I would say I would look to find a way to capitalize and monetize the investment for my investors and still own it.
Interesting.
You know, and I think that there's many ways to do that, but we're not even close to being ready for that kind of a thing right now.
Do you think, on a kind of hypothetical level, so I'm not asking you whether you're going to do this tomorrow, but like, do you think there's a space for football clubs to be listed or publicly traded, or they should remain kind of privately owned companies?
Well, there's no virtue to private or public. I mean, you know, the public markets bring a discipline. I think if teams, first of all, I absolutely believe that the public markets are coming to sports. You know, right now we're in the phase where institutions are coming to sports, governments, as well as, you know, professionally formed capital institutions. But it's clear we're on a trajectory where the public markets will come to it. And if we do our job and we transition these from multiples of revenue to multiples of cash flow, they will be ready, by definition, to be public. We're nowhere close to that right now. You know, some assets in America could potentially look at that, and you probably will see the Americans take the lead on that. But I think we're probably conservatively 3 to 5 years out from anything like that.
So first step, professionalize, then potentially
100%.
consider going
Yeah,
public.
because, you know, the public markets aren't going to tolerate this.
Because, I mean, you could argue some of the clubs that have gone public did so before they were probably supposed to.
Yeah, they're not. Yes, and I would argue that they're probably not, you know, publicly set up the way they would need to be today. Those were legacy transactions that, you know, wouldn't pass muster today in terms of what it would take to list.
Fair enough. Well, maybe last question for Zlatan. You've won more than 30 trophies throughout your career as a football player, which went on longer than most other professional players. You stopped at the age of 41, if I'm not mistaken. At the highest level, you brought AC Milan back to winning a title after so many years. In fact, the last title they had won was when you were playing for AC Milan. Where do you see yourself, again, at kind of 10, 20 years on in your career as a business leader?
I mean, to predict the future is difficult, but to having this opportunity to work with Gerry brings me to different levels, open doors to different areas. And then, like I said before, I have a lot to learn, I have a lot to grow, and where it takes me, I don't know. I mean, when I go into things, if it's sport ways or business, I don't like to do normal things. I like to do the difference. Then you're making a really impact, and whatever I can come into, I will try to do the difference. And where I am in 5-10 years, in business, in private life, I don't know. But I'm not afraid of challenges.
On that note, thank you very much, Zlatan. Thank you very much, Gerry.